Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fully Alive podcast with Michael and Megan Brusicky. I'm Michael. This is my wife, Megan.
Welcome.
Happy summer.
Happy summer. Summer's here.
What's
Finally.
your favorite
Actually, it's not finally. It came so fast this year.
What's your favorite season of the year?
Oh,
Spring, summer, fall, winter?
I guess I would have to say fall.
Yeah.
But
Feels confident.
it's not confident because I just like the change of season. I really would struggle to live somewhere where it was the same all the time. Like when summer comes, I'm so excited for summer. And then when the weather changes to fall, I'm so excited for fall.
Yeah.
Winter, I get so excited hoping that it's going to snow, which it rarely does in Southeast Virginia. And then spring and it warms up and everything turns green. Like I love the change.
Yeah.
What about you?
My favorite season is definitely fall.
Yeah.
No question.
What do you
Second
love?
favorite, so I love the weather. I love football. It's like a great sports season. It's like second New Year. People are coming back to church when they were off for the summer. There's more structure that comes. Kids are back in school. I just love the fall.
Yeah.
So
What was your second favorite?
spring,
And what do you love about spring?
the weather, flowers blooming, just the reminder that
The pollen, the allergies.
I love it after pollen season. By the way, if you're watching this and you do not live in Virginia, we grew up in the Midwest, and one of the things that was the worst about moving to the Southeast 14, 15 years ago is that the allergies from pollen are insane.
It's crazy here.
And so,
Yeah. Yep.
anyway, we're glad you're here today.
Yep.
I'm pumped to talk about, we get to talk about probably as an Enneagram 7, one of my favorite things. And I think we're going to have so much fun. But let's have a little fun.
I thought the whole thing was going to be fun.
It's all fun. You're right. Everything, all of life is
Everything
fun.
you do is fun.
So let's do this. Let's finish these sentences.
Okay.
Yeah, we got some great help. So you do the first
The
one.
best part of my day is
The morning.
lately it's going to bed. I would have said the morning most of my adult life. I've loved the morning, but man, lately, like the last 2 months, I just am so excited to go to sleep at night.
Yeah. I think that's age. I don't know.
Is it age? I don't know if it's
Yeah.
age. I don't know if it's the season of life that I'm in. I just well, last night I said this at 7:30. I was like, is it time to go to bed yet? I'm ready.
Well, once our kids will be old enough to all put themselves to bed, that's going to be incredible.
They're getting there.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing.
They're getting there.
My biggest pet peeve is
I don't know. I'd have to think. What about you?
my biggest pet peeve is people who lack
Emotional intelligence?
Yes. We were having
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. We were having a conversation about that this morning, which even right now makes me wonder what I'm doing that other people could react to me.
Part of our conversation was that we all lack self-awareness in some way, right?
Yeah.
There's other things people notice about us that we don't notice about ourselves. But yeah, just spend some time in like a doctor's office waiting room
Wow. Yeah.
or an airport. And it's kind of incredible,
Yeah.
the amount of lack
You
of
know what?
others' awareness. It's others' awareness.
A real pet peeve of mine is when you're getting onto the highway and you have to merge and there's a car behind you and they quickly merge over before you and then get next
And
to
then
you
cut
to
you
where
off.
you can't get over. And I'm like, clearly we both had to get onto the highway. I don't know what the gameplay was here, but
Yeah.
I wish I was better at
Organization.
organization. That's interesting. I would say following through and structure.
Same
So-
basic thing.
Good thing we're married.
We're
We
doing a
really
great
support each
job.
other in that. It's amazing. I love the smell of.
I
You still can't
I
smell.
still can't smell.
4 years
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. I can smell some things sort of sometimes.
You know what's
I
amazing?
usually can't figure out what the smell is though.
I heard Dino Rizzo preach a message. Not preach a message. Well, I've heard him preach lots of messages. He said something one time about the smell of fresh baked bread, and then you started baking bread in the last couple of years sometimes, and I love the smell.
A fresh baked bread?
Yeah, I don't like to eat it, but I love.
I do like to eat it.
So you can bake it. I'll smell it. You eat it. It's gonna be great. Hey, today we're gonna talk about adventure. I love adventure. I think adventure is important for us, and I think it's important for us because following Jesus is an adventure.
Yeah.
You know, we can get into the scriptures and It starts in Genesis 12. God calls this guy Abram, and he calls him to leave everything he knows. And this is a massive paraphrase of Genesis 12 if you go read this in your Bible. But he calls him to leave everything he knows and to go on this wild adventure into everything that God is going to show him. But he doesn't get to know what God is going to show him until he steps into this wild adventure.
Yeah, the craziest part of that is where he says, leave and go to the place that I will show you.
Right.
Not like leave and go here and here's the map and the directions. He says, get going and I will show you where you're going.
So I want to frame up this talk today from this perspective that adventure is a requirement for a follower of Jesus. Because I believe that adventure and faith are often one and the same thing. And I think that playing it safe is never God's plan for our life, and an adventureless life is never God's plan for our life. But we need to have wisdom, and we need to know how to live that out. So let's have some, talk about this in a variety of different ways. Start with how would you define adventure? Great. So what I would say...
Well, I was trying to put it in like a short sentence, like a definition of adventure. But I guess I think of adventure as just like, when I think of adventure, I think of faith. I think of like out of my comfort zone, trying something new, being willing to take a step of faith or to take a step of out of my comfort zone. Really, that's what I think of adventure, I suppose.
I think that's great.
I don't know. I think adventure is your comfort zone, so I feel like your definition may be different.
Well, and so, I was in a conversation recently with a group of CEOs, and we were talking about how some people like to lead in chaos, and like they feel like that's when, like they love that. They feel like that's the most when they're the best leader. And then there's some people who like to lead in calm. And they feel like that's when they believe they're the best leader. And throughout history, there's been different presidents and leaders who have proven they're good leaders when it's, a wartime, and they're not good leaders when it's a peacetime, and vice versa. So I think adventure can sometimes be a little bit into your own personality. Yeah. It might be an adventure to you to go sit in solitude for 1 hour, because I think of an adventure of stepping into something when you don't really know the outcome.
Right.
And so I think that depending on your personality, right, it could look
That's
a little bit
interesting that you
different.
said that, because I about leadership specifically, in something I was reading recently, a book called The Gift of Apostle, about the fivefold ministries: the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, shepherd. Right. Evangelist, pastor, teacher. Pastor, shepherd is interchangeable. Anyway. Learning more about those specific functions that God has given us, and how like sort of everybody sort of embodies one or multiples of those in different ways, and recognizing how much like that apostolic you carry, that let's go, let's do, let's take on a challenge, whereas I'm more of like shepherd. My personality is different, and like that, what you just said, like a chaos versus a peace, like where we naturally fit.
Right.
Yet we are all called to go.
Right.
Right. We're all called to choose adventure, to choose to move forward, to choose to follow Jesus and take steps of faith. Right. Even if it looks a little bit different based on our personality.
Right. Would you say you like adventure?
Yes. I don't think that we like it in the same ways, though. Like, I'm not as brave to initiate adventure as you are. Like, you're much more willing to take a risk, to do the unknown, figure it out as you go. Right. Whereas I like calculated risk. I like to know what I'm risking, and like I love, even just like if we talk about like adventurous experiences, right? Like hiking. We love to go hiking. I love to be outside. I love to be in the mountains. I love to go do, fun things. I love zip lining, all that. But like, I want to know.
I'm scared to death to ever zip line again after the story you told me about those people that broke all their bones zip lining in
Ecuador.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. We're going to just move past that story. But I think I like adventure in a like, I know the end. I feel like
You're confident in how it's going to end.
I'm confident in how it's gonna. I love to go hiking, but like I want a map.
Yeah, I
I
think
want to know what trail we're on. Whereas you're more like much more confident in general to take steps of faith when you don't know what the outcome is going to be.
I think that I think that's why when we frame this conversation up, thinking about Abraham, God would change his name to Abraham, but God doesn't give us the map,
No, never.
and we all want a map.
Yeah.
And I have
Jesus did the same thing. He just said, "Come and follow me." He didn't say where we were
where
going or what we're even hardly going to do.
Remember when the disciples said, "Hey, we want to go stay where you're staying," and he said, "There's nowhere.
Yeah, right.
You're not going to a. It's not that you're not going to a 5-star. You're not even going to a good tent. He's like, we don't have that in this life, and I think I have a. I hope it's healthy. Maybe sometimes I could be not as good as it should be, in that I don't want to displease God with my life by not continuing to take steps of faith. And from a spiritual perspective, when I find myself in my leadership as a pastor, or even what I would sometimes try to bring into my own life or bring into our family, if it feels like I can be passive, I'm like, I'm probably not doing what God wants me to do. And I think it's something that it's important to have. I think it's why God put us together, and then other people that are around me as well, to make sure that, again, they're not stupid risk, but that it is truly like a faith adventure. Like, man, there's so many people that need to get saved. So many people need to get Christian education. So many people need to be discipled and follow Jesus. So let's keep trying to figure out ways. I don't really know how it's going to go, but I don't want God to look at my life one day and be like, "Hey, you did a good job sitting back and reading your Bible."
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I want to make sure that I like stepped in. Lord, I'm not sure where this is going, but I hear you saying do this, so I'm going to step into it.
Yeah. What would you say the correlation of adventure and being content? Like, how do you see those two things working together? Because I think sometimes my challenge with
I feel like we're partway doing like a therapy session also in this, and I like it. It's great.
Oh, okay.
No, keep going. I was saying I like it. It's great.
Well, because I think
we can have public therapy.
Sometimes I think adventure and taking risk and going and doing something new can be an escape for being content, an escape for stewarding well the thing you're supposed to do right now. So, like, how do you, especially as a leader, how do you navigate that tension of taking steps of faith, moving forward, being adventurous, but also like being content too? Well,
to take a super spiritual risk right now, and adventurous response, I've been actually, and I haven't shared this much. It's really fresh, and what I've been praying about, and some of just thinking a lot, is the burden. The Apostle Paul talks about the burden he feels for the churches. And so part of what I have been like heavy on my life lately is wanting to, for us as a church, step into, we're launching a school this fall, which is super scary. Like, I have no idea how that's going to go. We've got multiple locations. I believe God has more locations for us. We have international, so many things that God has blessed us with. So I want to keep starting more and going more, but I felt this incredible burden, like, for our staff and for our leaders, and just knowing, like, I want to make sure that they're well cared for. I want to make certain that going and doing something, doesn't end up hurting who's leading and pastoring. And so if this answers your question, I think it's an important question, even just for me to say in this moment. One of the things I've really been praying through is to contentment and adventure is it's that big piece of discernment and wisdom.
It's good.
And I can't do this, you can't do this without knowing the Holy Spirit is ultimately the one leading us through this process. So massive amount of prayer and like, okay, God, what happens? Remembering too, as a leader, I'm not, even though that we have staff or employees, we're not their provider. God is their provider. At the same time, wanting to make sure we make wise decisions, and to not just do things to do things. And I also think at the end of the day that escapism is a real thing, and you can just go do fun stuff because it can help you escape.
It's more fun than having to figure out something hard that.
Yeah.
But it can be.
But I had a conversation just yesterday with some other leaders, and at whatever level you lead, whatever thing you carry responsibility for, it is super weighty.
Yeah.
And nobody knows the weight of that thing. It's not a task.
Right.
It's not like, well, I had to get these things done today. It is just a weight that you never get away from.
Yeah.
So you can go on an adventure, but that comes with you as a leader. And so.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that, I admire about you as your wife and your partner in life and ministry, it has definitely been challenging for me because it's not my, my instinct isn't always like to go and do a new thing, but I admire that so much about you because I know that things don't exist. New schools don't exist. New churches don't exist. New ministries don't exist if people don't go and do them. Right? Somebody has to start something. Somebody has to be willing to take the risk, to go on the adventure, to create things that God is leading them to do. And so I admire that about you, your willingness to do that. I remember even just very early on in us following Jesus, before we were ever in any kind of ministry, you were like, in your workplace, you immediately like started a small group. And then you weren't content for it to just be your small group. You helped somebody else start another small group, and it became a network of small groups that I think still exists to this day within that company, because of that heart of it's that gift of apostle, that desire to go and to do and to start and to lead.
What that makes me think of for all of us is maybe how to measure adventure a little bit, and knowing that our adventures, if it's a lifestyle of adventure, is that we see something being produced from it that is healthy. It could be just internal, right? This makes me healthier mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But then also, what is the impact of the adventure you're taking on the people around you? What is the lasting impact? What is the legacy that gets left? What are some of those other things that happen? I think all that plays. So again, back to your original question of like contentment and adventure. I think those are two things you hold in your hand at the same time. And I think we have to figure out, how do I discern what is right and what is not right for right now? Because those two things have to be present all the time.
Yeah. As a leader who is like, you're, a senior leader in our organization, how do you navigate steps of faith with people in your life who speak wisdom into your life? What does that look like?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Well, I know the answer to this question, so I was asking.
You were setting me up for a win. That's awesome, but I wish I
just mean when we want to be led by the Spirit, we want to take steps of faith and all of that. But like, you have people in your life who you trust to speak into that, right?
Yeah, I do what they say. Is that what you mean?
No, I just mean all of us, like, we don't have to figure it all out by ourselves, right? We have spiritual leaders. We have people, mentors and friends, and who we can help wrestle those things out with, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's two guys in my life, that for the most part, I would just do whatever they say. And I talk to them about stuff, you know, and that is a big part of that, There's wisdom in having a pastor. I think for all of us, there's wisdom in knowing that we don't make decisions on our own, that we, certainly if you're married, talk through it with your spouse, but then who is a spiritual authority in your life that you trust, that you would submit yourself to. It just is. So for me, it's like wide open, freeing in this life of adventure. And sometimes, I don't like what they say to me.
What have you learned from like taking a risk that maybe didn't go the way you hoped it would?
So I have, part of my personality that I love is I tend to not really remember failures and bad things. So I don't really think most things fail because I forget about them if they do. But, as a church, we've started a lot of ministries that we've stopped, we've closed a location. Things we've started that don't go the way that I had hoped they would go. Vacations. We're talking to a couple of friends the other day, some of our we're on like a... We're on like
a 2-year bad weather vacation situation.
So it's like, this is going to be great. And then, it's awful. For the most part, we make the best of it.
Yeah.
But, at some point in your life,
you get tired of making the best of it. You get tired of it.
that you get to take.
Yeah.
So
How do you keep, I mean, I know you said like part of your personality is that you don't really dwell on those things, but like, how do you keep taking steps of faith and trusting God even when it's not always working out the way that you wanted it to or thought it would?
Well, I just really believe that God's always working.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm really convinced that, there's always hope and that God's never done.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at my life, I'm 44 years old. I'm not where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I could get in my own head and be like, I'm not as good as I want to be. I could honestly go down a long list, and I don't really need to do that publicly, of all the things that I wish I was better at, that I thought by this point in my life I would have a greater handle on, but what I am so convinced of is God's never going to quit on me. And so if I just will refuse to quit in following him, and even when I'm like, man, I feel like I've been failing for 2 months at this, or feel like I've been failing for 3, whatever it is, I'm going to keep. So that to me is like, okay, let's go again.
Yeah.
Let's go again, because I think while I think routines are important, I think that sometimes if we're not careful, we just build a life of just, well, I'll just stay in this routine. Then it becomes a rut. Then all of a sudden I've been 5 years of living and I haven't really done anything. I've just lived in a routine, so safe, but I haven't really done anything except eat, sleep, maybe go to work.
Yeah.
So
how do you think we can add more adventure in our lives?
Yeah, I think that all of us need to, I think we all need to do things that scare us.
Get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
There's 2 words that I've used a lot. We've used a lot in our life, excited and scared. I was talking to the head of school we hired this past week, and, she's retiring out of the public school system. She's a great leader, but she's never been the head of a Christian school before. So we know that this is new, but it's exciting and scary all at the same time. I think that is where we're supposed to live as Christians. And I think, so if we can make this like fun for a minute, I think that's why the practice of adventurous things is so healthy.
Right.
Is because we need to not, if our whole life, if we're going to do something that's exciting and scary, and the only thing is like, I have to move across the country, or I have, well, no, just go whitewater rafting.
Yeah, right.
Like do something adventurous, because what that does is that builds a practice in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love to do adventurous things. I mean, I like to go try and do things where there's a chance I might die. I mean,
you don't want to go skydiving though. You did say this week you have no interest in skydiving.
Because it just doesn't sound
You
fun
could die
to me.
though.
You could die. I don't want to die, to be clear. Well, I mean, Paul said to die is gain. So I think that heaven's going to be way better than earth.
Yeah. One of my
So-
favorite ways to adventure, and I think it's, you don't have to change your career. You don't have to start a school. You don't have to, I think we can talk about adventure in a few different ways, right, in our life. But I think just adding adventure into our lives, like do something out of your normal routine. One of my favorite things to do is to visit another country or another culture, see how people live, eat different food, see, experience a different culture. I just think it changes the way we think. It's so valuable to our lives to experience something that isn't your everyday normal.
I think that if you only live in the familiar, and this I'm saying based on experience of what I've watched in people, if you only live in the familiar, it breeds fear. And here's what I mean. I know multiple people in my life. I guess we can say this. I mean, my dad, for one, when you don't really step out of your comfort zone a lot, and you stay with only the familiar routines all the time, things then that are at all different, you're scared of.
Yeah.
And that's some of what his story was later in life, because he had
It's almost like his world got smaller.
He had become so sheltered in the things that he did that going into certain cities or going in to do anything, he felt too nervous.
Yeah.
But I've seen this in other people too, and I think that's why we need a practice where we don't just do the same thing over and over and over again, but we need to make sure we build adventure into it. And like what you just said, I think going to other cultures and seeing stuff, is great. We got to go to Europe for a few days this year, and we're walking home in a city that's pedestrian primarily city, you know? And I'm like, I don't know if it's safe to be walking at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, I think it is. They said it was. There's other people out walking. But you live your life in this way where there's an element of like, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it also keeps you a little bit like, oh, I'm experiencing.
Yeah. And it gets you out of thinking that my experience is the only experience. You know, I just think it shapes our mind. It shapes our thoughts. We see God differently, whether that's another culture or it's just even, you know, going to the mountains or to the ocean or whatever, like just getting out of your usual routine is so good. I think, I don't know if this is scientifically accurate.
We can say
if anybody
this.
would say, but like, I think adrenaline is good for us once in a while. Like do something that makes your heart race.
Right.
Whether that's, you know, hiking or ziplining or whitewater rafting or, you know, just, I think adrenaline's good once in a while.
Well, I think about like that ropes course. There's ropes courses all over, but there's a ropes course in Virginia Beach.
Yeah, the one
Adventure
that's
Park.
down by the,
And I love,
what is that, by the Science Museum?
I don't know, but it's close enough to
Aquarium?
the ocean front. But, you know, you go, and I know I don't know if I've done the double diamond, black diamond. I think maybe I did once, but I can't remember. But I just know climbing up to the black diamond, I mean, like my legs are shaking.
Right.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to fall and die. Honestly, I guess you could, but you know, you would be hanging there.
Right.
But it's like, I'm freaking out and it's using all of my muscles that I have then the next day you're soaring, you know, muscles you didn't even know existed in your body. But man, you just like got that rush of, I love it.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, everything affects everything. And so if I'm going to take a risk in pastoring and leading, in starting a new ministry, hiring a new person, whatever it would be, well, I need a practice in my life that I'm comfortable knowing, like I do things that I don't know how it's going to go. As a parent, everything's an adventure. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that helps us I think you and me, if we can look at that more like that as a parent, we don't, you know, we learn from parents who have adult children who are following Jesus. And anytime I can be around, you know, a pastor who has adult kids following Jesus, I always ask the same question: what did you do? Because I always want to know anything I can do to help set my kids up to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, parenting's a wild adventure. Our kids are on a wild adventure. And we just need to keep following God.
Yeah. I mean, I think my greatest goal for our kids, I want them to follow Jesus, but I want them to see us following Jesus. I hope that they look back at our life and think my parents had faith.
Yeah.
My parents believed God for big things. You know, they took steps of faith. They were adventurous,
That's
and
so
maybe
good.
it wasn't, you know, always predictable,
Yeah.
but they saw how we trusted God, and that I hope that shapes their life.
That's so good. I'm going to ask them tonight if they would say we're big faith people. What do you think they'll say?
I don't know.
We'll ask them individually.
I'm curious what they'll say, you know, when they're grown.
Yeah.
Who knows what they'll say
Who cares
now?
what they say now? I agree. They're just kids.
No,
I'm
stop.
just
That's
kidding.
not how you feel.
I'm just kidding.
I just think with kids, you don't really know if you're doing a good job until they're like 30.
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't know then. I don't have a 30-year-old.
Let's do a little marriage help, a little relationship help. I think that going on adventures
Yeah.
with your spouse are so important. I think that one of the best ways to grow in intimacy is to accomplish difficult and challenging things together.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree. I think being able to do things together is so important. I think whether it's accomplishing something or just like experiencing something together,
Yeah.
you know, shared experiences are uniting.
Yeah.
They strengthen bonds. They create memories that you reflect on. And, you know, I can think now we love to go new places and experience new things. You know, I think there's something to be said about consistent, like going to the same place on a trip or whatever and having like those special places. But also I think there's something really special about new experiences together, and you build bonds. I think it can be really strengthening for your relationship to experience things together.
Yeah, we're going to go stay somewhere in a few weeks that has a sauna and a hot tub and a cold plunge. And I don't think we've ever done a sauna and a hot tub and a cold plunge at the same time.
Cold plunge.
with mountains in
They're
the view.
supposed to be really good for you. Cold
Yeah.
plunges.
Have you done one at all before?
I mean, I put my legs in the ocean a couple weeks ago. It felt like
That's
a cold plunge.
it's amazing.
It was pretty cold. I have done a cold plunge before.
What are a couple of your favorite adventures we've done together?
Whitewater rafting in Alaska.
That was crazy.
That was crazy. The water was so cold. That was a cold plunge.
That was a
We had
total
to wear
cold plunge.
dry suits for that.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
amazing. We
That
saw a
was
bear,
cool.
right? Or did I dream that? Did
I
we see a
don't
bear
know.
on the
I don't
bank?
remember.
In the stories I tell, we saw a bear. So I'm going to keep that there.
I mean, it's sort of familiar, maybe, but
It was almost 20 years. It was 20
it was
years
a
ago.
long
Yeah.
time ago. Yeah.
You're digging into the past.
Well, I remember it really. Clearly, I don't remember it that clearly,
I'm
but
still convinced.
I
it was a bear.
remember that whitewater rafting. I have loved adventures skiing together.
Yeah. Love to ski.
Loved snow skiing together. I mean, are we just talking about vacation adventures?
No, just anything.
Oh,
Just- just date-
experiencing other cultures has been so fun. Like being able to go to El Salvador or the Philippines together.
Yeah.
I just think there's just something significant about those experiences together. But, our life, I feel like, is an adventure.
Crazy
It's,
adventure.
From the very beginning of choosing to follow Jesus, like we've just chosen to say yes and not know what's next.
Right.
And while I've had some times where that's been really frustrating for me as a person who would like
Right.
more, I don't want to say less adventure. I'm not sure what the right word is, but
I think it's-
predictability. I
yeah.
I want to know the outcome. I think it's also really exciting that I don't know what's next. I don't know what God has for us next. And that adventure of following Jesus and
It's good.
has been my favorite.
Yeah. I think it's so, I think that it is so important, so significant to know that you have a life of adventure. And that doesn't have to look the same for every
No.
person
Yeah.
because your personality is part of that, Then when you're, obviously, if you're married, the two of you are one. And so then how that works for the two of you. But whatever it looks like for you, we would like to encourage you to make sure adventure is a part of your life.
Yeah.
Don't make the routine a rut. Try something new.
Yeah.
Try something that you've never done before. And be in unity about it.
Yeah.
And there's so much.
And don't make excuses.
So
don't let
true.
everyday life be an excuse for why you can't adventure.
Yeah. I mean, just go jump in the pond close to where you live and just see what happens. Right? Maybe that's bad
Maybe.
advice.
I don't know.
But there's simple, small things,
Yeah.
I think, of just stepping in to a life of adventure that we could all really step into.
Yep.
Any final adventure thoughts?
I just think we can all live an adventurous life. And it, like you said, it doesn't look the same way just because, we're not saying that following Jesus means you have to be in ministry and do what we do. That's not at all the heart.
Right.
God has a life for every single one of us that's full of faith and full of adventure and, being led by the Holy Spirit and choosing to live full of faith.
Yeah, I think I would offer this final thought. When I think of adventure, a life of adventure and a life of non-adventure, it's really a question of, do you want to be on the sidelines or do you want to be in the game? And, there's definitely time when you need to get a break. But be in the game, live on purpose, live full of faith in what that looks like in your context. Life following Jesus is an adventure. And so step into it.
Yeah.
Get all God has for you.